McLaren has achieved a historic milestone. In 2024, they finally won the Formula One Constructors Championship, something they hadn't managed to achieve since 1998.
This is the moment that McLaren dreamed of. McLaren are world champions of 2024. They win the Constructors title.
Very well deserved.
In 2024, they proved to be the best throughout the season. But it wasn't always this way, because some years ago, the situation was tragic.
The engine was going much slower than before. Amazing.
Breakdowns, retirements, and results worthy of a backmarker team, this was McLaren. How did they go from worst on the grid to world champions? So, to tell this story properly, we need to take a look back, precisely in 2012. Until this year, McLaren was considered a top team. They had claimed 8 Constructors titles in total, and they finished the 2012 season third in the Constructors standings. However, the following year marked the beginning of their downfall. Hamilton would join the new Mercedes team, and with his departure, it seemed as if McLaren started to lose its shine. But it was in 2013 that things started to go wrong. Throughout the season, the car lacked performance. Jenson Button and a young Sergio Perez scored points, but they were always in the midfield, and the Woking-based team ended the season in 5th place with only 122 points. Even the stunning black and gold Lotus outperformed them, and by a significant margin. At the end of the season, the gap between the two teams was 193 points, an eternity. But the real problems came the following year, when in 2014, a revolution came into F1. The regulations shifted from the V8 engines to the V6 turbo hybrid engines, with car designs drastically different from previous years. McLaren entered this new era still powered by Mercedes engines, which were by far the best. However, under the direction of the historic CEO and former team principal, Ron Dennis, the British team believed they needed an exclusive engineer supplier to truly compete. So, McLaren and Mercedes parted ways for good, and the British team desperately needed a new exclusive engine supplier. Now, there was an idea to partner with Honda. Was it risky? Absolutely. But to return to glory, no partnership seemed better than reuniting with a Japanese manufacturer for Ron Dennis. McLaren had made history with Honda in the late 1980s and early 1990s.
Ayrton Senna achieves his ambition to win the Brazilian Grand Prix.
So they knew what it was like. But this decision plunged the Woking-based team into darkness. While an agreement was reached between the two parts, in 2014, McLaren finished 5th in the standings with their last Mercedes engines. Expectations for 2015 were high, but that year, however, everything changed. Now, first of all, Fernando Alonso joined McLaren from Ferrari, a shocking move for the entire F1 sport, but Alonso wasn't alone. Andrea Stella also followed in the Spaniard's footsteps. The Italian engineer joined McLaren as head of race operations after serving as Alonso's race engineer at Ferrari for 4 years. Additionally, as we previously said, Honda developed a custom engine for McLaren, but it wasn't just any engine. The Japanese aimed to win and embarked on an extremely ambitious project. Their goal was to create the smallest, lightest, most powerful and reliable engine possible. The result?
Because until they can clear that car, it really is in a horrible position. Fernando Alonso retiring in his first race for McLaren.
GP2 engine.
That must have been a brake failure. Alonso does not make mistakes.
Fernando Alonso was just given a less than 5-star review.
They failed miserably. Not only was the car slow and underpowered compared to the others, but it also broke down almost every race. You have to think that Alonso, in 2015, collected a staggering 575 grid penalty positions due to his power unit component changes. That year was a disaster. The team's 2 drivers, Alonso and Button, retired 12 times over the season, leading McLaren to finish 9th in the championship. Frustration was tangible, and Alonso made it clear during the Japanese GP with a legendary team radio, angrily comparing his Honda engine to a GP2 one, which is actually the current Formula 2.
GP2 engine. GP2.
But 2016 came soon enough, and after such a miserable 2015, everyone expected improvements. How could a historic team like McLaren have fallen so far? Something had to change. In the same year, Ron Dennis was shown the door, and an unknown figure named Zak Brown was brought in. Zak Brown wasn't just anyone. After a junior career in karting, single-seaters and GT racing in the 90s, Brown embarked on a business career. He made numerous connections in both Europe and America, founding in 1995 a motorsport marketing agency called Just Marketing International. It was a marketing company focused on the motorsport world that had the main target to connect sponsors and teams. The business flourished, and in 2009 he co-founded the United Autosports team, which still competes in high-level GT and endurance championships around the world. Brown excelled at networking and attracting sponsors. It's no coincidence that by 2018, McLaren became the team with the most sponsors in the paddock. The American knew how to run a team, and after becoming CEO, he revolutionized McLaren from multiple angles. So, with Zak Brown at the helm, McLaren was ready to rise from the ashes. In 2016, they finished 6th in the championship. Not great, but better than the 9th place of 2015. However, this apparent recovery was a false dawn, as in 2017, the Woking team fell back into darkness again. In fact, in 2017, the team finished 9th, in second to last place. It was humiliating. The issues were still engine related. With Honda, McLaren was a total failure. Frustration reached its peak for Fernando Alonso and Stoffel van Dorn, with few points finishes and a combined 15 retirements. The 2017 season was essentially a repeat of 2015, and at this point, Brown decided it was time to act. Zak's first step was to listen to the team's leadership. As he later stated, he needed to understand the situation. He removed people he felt were in the wrong place, and then, using his extensive motorsport network, he built a team of trusted collaborators. Only a few people he considered worthy stayed within the organisation. But that wasn't enough. Once the team was reorganised, they needed a more visual transformation. From 2017 onward, McLaren returned to its original papaya orange livery, the colour Bruce McLaren chose when he founded his team. This gave McLaren a renewed identity. Additionally, also in the same year, came the end of McLaren's partnership with Honda. A change was necessary. Fresh air was needed. In fact, in 2018, McLaren decided to partner with Renault as their new engine supplier. Their engines were reliable and cheaper than the Mercedes and Ferrari ones. It was the perfect compromise. The season marked the first turning point. Alonso and Van Dorn once again secured 6th place in the championship, as they had in 2016. But this time, something big was about to change. While the 2018 season unfolded, Zak didn't sit on his hands. In 2017, Porsche had withdrawn from the World Endurance Championship, WEC, leaving Andreas Seidel, head of their project, without commitment. This was the perfect opportunity to bring in someone of value. Seidel accepted the role of team principal, officially starting in 2019. Significant changes followed, including a complete driver lineup overhaul. Alonso and Van Dorn were replaced by a young Lando Norris arriving from F2 and the experienced Carlos Sainz, a solid performer. Seidel also restructured the team, reducing the number of leaders while increasing their responsibilities. He finally outlined a long-term plan to make McLaren competitive again, emphasizing the need for a new simulator, advanced machinery, softwares, and a state-of-the-art wind tunnel. Investments were essential. The new team principal also hinted at a special request. To truly compete, they needed Mercedes engines. They were the best on the grid for years, known for their performance and reliability. The Renault engines were certainly better than Honda's, but Renault was a compromise. The idea of Mercedes engines was discussed, but only put into action 2 years later. McLaren began to rise again. The drivers worked well together, and the team was united with high ambitions. In 2019, McLaren finished 4th in the championship, outscoring Renault by 54 points. Retirements were limited to just 7 between both drivers, and most races ended with heavy points finishes. The comeback had begun. McLaren could finally see light at the end of the tunnel. The following year went even better. Yes, 2020 was a strange season for Formula 1 due to COVID-19, unusual circuits, a shorter calendar, and a rather crazy championship. However, the saying "don't change a winning team" held true, and McLaren finished the season 3rd in the Constructors Championship. The Woking team even secured 2 podiums, the first with Norris in Austria during the opening race of the season, and the second with Sainz at Monza, chasing down a relentless Gasly who claimed a stunning victory with his AlphaTauri. Meanwhile, 2021 brought further changes. Ferrari poached Sainz from McLaren, and Ricciardo joined the British team. Looking back, if Sainz had stayed, he might have delivered better results than Ricciardo. In fact, the Australian joined McLaren after 2 years at Renault, but struggled immensely to adapt. He couldn't match Norris's driving style. We've actually made a video about Ricciardo and what happened during his years at McLaren. Feel free to check it out later. The link is actually right above. Now, the second major change came with the engines. McLaren finally took a decisive step forward. From 2021, they switched to Mercedes these power units. Unfortunately, they finished the championship in 4th place, far behind Ferrari, but their on-track results were promising. Norris secured 4 podiums that season, and at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, McLaren achieved a 1-2 finish, with Ricciardo winning, followed by Norris. The 4th place in the Constructors was good. It could have been better for sure, but for the first time they were stable and were emerging from years of darkness. But unfortunately, the 2022 regulation changes didn't help much. The cars had changed in shape, weight and size, but even this didn't really benefit the British team. Ricciardo continued to struggle, particularly in tight low-speed corners where McLaren suffered from excessive understeer. This made the car challenging to handle, and Ricciardo couldn't adapt to this driving style. Norris, however, managed to optimise the car's potential, but with the Australian underperforming, McLaren finished 5th in the Constructors, 14 points behind Alpine. However, something shocking happened at the end of 2022. McLaren team principal, Andreas Seidel, suddenly left his position. The German engineer, who had helped the team to get back on track, chose not to renew his contract. The reason was because he was offered a role as CEO for the future Audi team, a far more relevant position than the one of team principal. Seidel considered his work done, and as a result, the two parted ways, with McLaren ready for another big transformation in 2023. Yes, because in that same year, not only did a fiery rookie named Oscar Piastri debut alongside Norris, but Andrea Stella also took charge of the team. After joining McLaren in 2015 with Alonso, the Italian engineer climbed the ranks thanks to his calm approach and experience. Once in command, Stella refined the team's technical department, creating a structure made of 3 technical directors, each leading a specific area. One of them was Rob Marshall, a key engineer close to Newey, who was poached directly from Red Bull. However, there was a problem. The car at the start of 2023 was a disaster. McLaren was completely off pace and slow everywhere. In the first part of the season, the team struggled significantly. Early on, even Stella and Brown addressed the entire working structure and the media, clearly explaining the situation without hiding. McLaren, although, knew one thing: everything was about to improve once the first big update would arrive. At the start of the season, the British team was so far behind that scoring points was considered incredibly tough. The much anticipated update came only at the 9th race of the season in Austria. But from that point on, the car transformed. Suddenly, McLaren went from struggling to score points to racing an incredible season. They made a spectacular leap forward, consistently securing podiums and high position finishes, catching up and closing the season in 4th place ahead of Aston Martin. This 4th place was crucial for McLaren's budget and prestige, especially since Lawrence Stroll's team surprised everyone in 2023 by finishing on the podium so many times in the first part of the season. At the start, it seemed like Aston Martin was suddenly going to clinch 2nd place in the championship. Then we arrive in 2024, the year of McLaren's breakthrough. But even if they won the championship, we need to remember that at the start of the season, McLaren once again faced big challenges. They scored points early on, but were still fighting for a potential 4th place in the standings, nothing more. The turning point came for Norris more than for Piastri, with the first strong results in China and Miami, where the English driver finished 2nd and 1st. From then on, McLaren continued to shine, consistently finishing on podiums with both drivers. What surprised everyone was their consistency. Throughout the season, they proved to have the strongest car and eventually won the Constructors Championship. And so, this is how McLaren went from being the worst at the bottom of the grid to become world champions.